Trigger warning. This episode contains discussions of sensitive topics and traumatic events, including drug addiction, child sexual abuse, and domestic abuse. Listener discretion is advised.
Okay, so welcome to another episode of Shameless Stories, the podcast. This is a podcast that invites guests to come on and share their stories, offering a space to speak into how they've moved through shame and into power and confidence. And I invite heroes and heroines to share their stories, to offer up a different way of doing life, to offer up a way of showing up shamelessly, and, you know, being who they truly are. And today I'm really excited to welcome on a special guest. But I think it's my first man this season. I have Ryan Harland, who is joining me, who is a mental health advocate, the author of Riding the Storm, and a prolific speaker on his story. So welcome, Ryan. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you very much, Sarah. And I'm grateful to be the first man, I guess.
Well, it's my first recording. It's not saying you're, you know, anyway, we could go somewhere else with that. But anyway, so I'm so grateful that you're joining me today. And I have got a copy of your book. Just here he is. And we have started working together, and we spent the day talking about your story. And I guess I'm going to just dive straight in, because the big question that I ask quite a few of our guests is like, what's the worst thing that could be shared about you? And I think everything that you have ever shared, especially in your book, is probably something that would shock quite a lot of people. Would that be a fair assumption?
Yeah. I guess it will shock a lot of people, because a lot of people won't have experienced half as much as what I have. But I don't do it to shock people. I just share my story to make awareness and to help anyone out there, not just to people who've been through exactly the same as me, but any kind of trauma in their lives. And I share it just to show that it shouldn't define you, what you've been through. You define who you are and that. And it doesn't matter how old you are or what you have been through, you can still have a positive life if that's what you want. You know, nothing should stop you achieving your goals in life, especially your past.
Do you want to share a little bit about, I know you go into schools and you go into the police service and the prison service, and you've been out speaking quite a lot about this. So do you want to share a little bit about what you start with when you go into these spaces?
Basically, I just kind of introduce myself and who I am and what I aim to be in life. Then I just kind of start at the beginning of my story and work through until where I am now. Obviously, I don't go into every single detail because I've been there for hours. Yeah, I just kind of explain what me and my brother went through as children, what we experienced and that, and the trauma that we faced and how it affected us in our late teenage years, early adulthood, and the paths that we went down because we thought that was the right thing to do, but it wasn't. And we managed, well, especially me, I managed to sort myself out and get myself back on the right path to be this person I am today, that want to be that person to share my story to inspire other people.
Yeah. I think so. On the back of your book, you talk about it's a memoir around trauma, losing your brother, and sexual assault from your father, and understanding, and it's basically the journey of your healing journey, kind of what happened to you and how you were able to get through that. Is there anything that people really pick up on when you're, I mean, do you want to tell me a bit about your story? Because it's all very well me saying it, but when it comes from the individual whose story it is, it's much more powerful, I feel.
Okay, yeah. Growing up, me and my brother didn't have the best examples of, like I say, adult parenting, I should say. Mum is the best mum ever that we could ever wish for. And she, to this day, apart from my wife, she's my best friend, and I love her to bits. But the other side, the father, but in the book and from now on, I always refer to him as sperm donor SD, because that's all he ever was. He was a complete narcissist, paedophile, peeping Tom, you name it, he'd done it. And he used to beat my mum up quite a lot as well. So growing up, the dynamics in our house was very strange. We grew up with learned behaviour of do whatever he wanted, so no one got hurt and that. And it was weird that I thought that that's what every person's life was like. You know, if someone come around our house, it was a completely different person. It was all nice and that and pleasant. And obviously when they left, he turned back into Jekyll and Hyde, you could say.
Yeah.
And I just assumed that when I went around my friends' houses, it was the same, because I thought as soon as I left, then all hell would break loose in their house. But it wasn't until later on in life, when I was 11, Mum decided to leave him. And at that time, I kind of didn't know why, because, like I said, I thought that was what every person's life was like. And then I started to see the real him, the real truth. You could say that not every household was like that, you know, it was just ours. And it was hell. It was hell. Learning the truth was harder than actually being in that bubble, which I thought that everyone else's life was like. So that had a massive impact on me and my growing up and my mental health and that. Then obviously life got tougher later on, seeing stuff in the papers about him, especially when I was going through my GCSEs. He was in the Daily Star dressed up as Father Christmas because he was a kind of known paedophile back then, but it wasn't as mainstream news like it is these days. And obviously, you know, there's so much more investigation and stuff like that to do with paedophiles, but back then it wasn't. But yeah, I was going through my GCSEs and he was dressed up as Father Christmas on the page 5 or something like that. I noticed at the beginning of the paper, and there was a big write-up of him about he shouldn't be allowed around kids and things like that. And that mucked me up. And then a couple of years later, I was around his flat one day and he raped me, basically. And I just lay there and took it because it was still learned behaviour, like do whatever he wanted so no one else got hurt.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a tough time, that bit.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing. And I know we talk about sharing these stories from a place of power, but I guess the more you share it, it's about not making it all right, but making it so that other people can understand that that's not normal behavior. That isn't, like, nobody had told you that what was happening at home with your dad that's how it's supposed to be. And I remember when we spoke, when you fell in love with your wife and, you know, you've built your new family, and you can now see a very stark difference to what you were brought up in and what unconditional, loving family, supportive family looks like. And I think this is another thing that, just to kind of pull on that thread, I know that without their backing, you know, you wouldn't be sitting here talking to me, you wouldn't be out talking to other people. I think it's important to know that you feel safe and that you're supported in sharing these awful things that have happened to little you, and trying to not normalize it, but normalize talking about it.
Yeah, you're 100% right. You know, I'm lucky in that respect that I have got mum who's very supportive and my new wife and a good close friends group that I have that have loved me, accept me no matter what. That I'm lucky to have that I know that I have that safety net, so I can feel comfortable enough to go out and share my story to help others. And if I do have a bad time, I'm not going to be rejected or ridiculed or anything like that, which I have in the past in different relationships and things like that. So I've experienced both sides of that part as well. But at the end of the day, I do this for me and to help others. It helps me talk about it. It helps me regain power over the situation, because I can't change what happened in the past. I wish I could, but I can't. And for years and years, I just thought that that's what my life was going to be, just miserable, angry, hurt, and things like that. Then I learned a good few years ago that the word forgiveness comes in many forms. And I thought, to forgive someone, it's basically you're forgiving them for doing that and they can move on the rest of their lives. But I learned that I can forgive this situation because there's nothing I can do to change it, but I can choose what I do with that story now. I could either forget about it and just move on the rest of my life and be as normal as everyone else, or I can put it to some good and make it not worthwhile going through that, but turn it into something positive to say, okay, I've been through that, but now I'm going to use that negativity, turn it into positivity, and use that to help inspire other people just to open up a bit about what they've been through.
Yeah, I guess it's also not about like my stuff's worse than your stuff. Everybody's stuff is bad. If you're going through trauma, you're going through trauma. If you're going through something that feels uncomfortable or isn't right, no conversation should be no stone should be unturned, if that makes sense. Like, just having a conversation with somebody about what you're going through. Sometimes we talked about this as well when we met, and I think we grew up in a generation where there's so many people that want to fix everything for each other, or have an opinion, or be judgmental. And I think one thing that I have noticed over the years is actually all we ever wanted was to be heard, to be seen, and to realize that what's happening to us isn't actually our fault. Often, when grown-ups are behaving in the way that they behave, and I have classic examples with my own children. In fact, I had something happen this week and I got all upset, and it was like, hang on a minute, you're the grown-up in this situation. It's not her fault. It's like my daughter triggered me into behaving unacceptably, but I was soon quick to realize, I shouted at her. We all do, right? We all have those moments where we shout, but it was effectively, I got cross with her and shouted and took out my frustration on her. And it's not by any means the same as what's happened to you as a child, but the triggers are similar. I feel like, all it takes is for someone to frustrate you and then you lash out in a way of some description, but it's also the repair that you do after that. So I'm not saying it's okay to do those things, but what I'm also saying is consciously realizing you're doing those things, but also how you fix that moving forward, or how you what you do next. And I suspect in your situation there was none of that. It just happened and you were kind of just left going, what the hell just happened? I must have done something wrong. And I suspect that was happening to your mum and your brother.
Yeah, obviously, I kept quiet for a good few years, and that obviously didn't help. That had a lasting impact that I never knew was going to happen, because I tried forgetting about it, but obviously unconsciously it was always there, and it affected my behavior in the world and things like that. And I'm not making excuses for the things I did since all that. I hurt a lot of people. I ruined my first marriage because of the trauma and the impact that had on me later on in life, and other relationships that I've ruined, and I've hurt a lot of people. And I'm not making excuses. I hold my hands up. I shouldn't have done it. I did. It wasn't intentionally going out there to hurt people. I was just trying to find myself, and unfortunately, I had to go down the wrong paths to find the right path. And
Yeah.
there's only so many times I can say sorry, but it's when people use that against me, use my mental health against me, or use what I've done to hurt people, they bring it up, and not so much now, but in the past they did. And it's like I never consciously done these things to hurt anyone. I was just scrambling around in this world trying to find where I fitted and things like that. I don't know what I thought love was, which turned out that wasn't love. That was just safe net, and just I thought everything was based around sex. That was just what love was. So I just went for anyone I could sleep with to feel that euphoria, which I thought was love, but it wasn't. And obviously I hurt people along the way in that one as well. And I can't take that stuff back. But all I can do is carry on being the person I am now, so other people don't go that far down that path, hopefully, and hurt others. They can get their selves back on track a lot quicker than I did.
Yeah. I guess if someone had maybe said to you the reasons why you're behaving like this is because X, Y, and Z a lot earlier, then hindsight's a wonderful thing. I think as well, we're living in a very different world to when we were growing up. Thankfully, there weren't mobile phones then.
Yeah.
But I feel like, that's a whole other conversation. But I know that you go into schools. So what are the sorts of things, like what's the work that you've been doing in schools? Because that always fascinates me.
Yeah, I've only done one school at the moment, and that was like it wasn't a mainstream school. It was for kids who struggle in
Yeah.
mainstream school, which they go into this lowercase school, and it's all for kids that kind of been through similar situations or just angry and things like that, and they give them a safe space and teach them that it's not their fault, like you were saying earlier on, because a lot of these kids I spoke to at this one school, you can see the pain in their eyes now, but because they don't know how to explain it, they just burst out in anger and be naughty and things like this and muck around because you just don't know how to deal with it. So going in there and sharing my story, obviously not as graphic as what I say in the book or what we talk about today, I had to really tone it down because obviously these are young kids. But for them just to hear someone else say that it's not your fault and you're not the only one in this world who's been through that, I know has made a huge impact to them already, because I had a message the day after I spoke at that school saying a lot of kids wanted some one-to-one sessions to give them that opportunity to talk more about what they go through and what they've been through and things like that. So to me, that was like, wow, I'm glad I had that opportunity to go in.
And then, so that's just amazing, because the fact that the kids want to actually want more, they want to be seen, they want to be heard. And sometimes we just want to be seen and heard by someone who's not our parent. And, teachers don't have the bandwidth for that sometimes. So I think the work that you're doing is great, going into a school and giving kids the opportunity, whether it's a girl or a boy, to sort of express themselves or just have a grown-up listen to them. I think that's so important. And also, you're speaking to them at a young age. You're probably providing the service that perhaps you needed when you were.
Oh, definitely. I remember going in that little school and that, I was thinking, I wish there was some things like that around when I was a kid, even though I was well behaved at school, I was quiet and got on with it, but I struggled. I really struggled because of the things that was going on in my life and that. So I just kind of, instead of my outbursts at school, I went in my shell at school, but then my outbursts were at home and that. But yeah, I wish there was something like that when I was a kid. Then maybe things would have been different. But like I say, hindsight's a wonderful thing. But if I'm glad it's there now, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I guess it's also the quiet ones you got to be careful of as well, right?
Yeah.
not
Yeah,
always.
it's not just the ones who are showing off and things like that and being naughty and that. I know you got to look at them because obviously that's a way of expressing their feeling, but it's the quiet ones who bottle everything up. They're the ones that you got to watch. You think, well, no, something's not right there. But never had it. Never had it when I was a kid.
Well, I'm thankful that you're providing that service now. And, and obviously, I think you said as well, you've shared with me that you've been into prisons and working with some of the NHS as well to talk to them about kind of what it's like being on the other side of it. And I mean, I'm guessing the people in prison may have been in a similar situation, but they're the ones that have made different choices to you. Would that be fair to say?
Oh,
Don't want
yeah.
to anything.
No, definitely. Like I said to you the other week when we met up, it was a massive eye opener for me going into prisons. Like, obviously, I stand up in front of them, share my story and that, and it was the questions bit afterwards that I really enjoy because I love hearing other people engaging about it and telling me little bits and things like that. And going to the prison, hearing their stories, basically a lot of them have been through a lot of trauma as kids and that, but they didn't have the support network that I did. So they go further down the path into crime just to find a purpose in life and just to get noticed. And obviously it was a wrong path for them, but you know that if they had the support network years ago, they probably wouldn't have been in prison now. And I'm not saying that they don't deserve to be in prison because obviously they've done the crime. You got to do the time, but you can just see them thinking, wow, if I'd done this different and I'd done that, or if I'd spoken up or things like that. And an eye opener for me as well, because I thought, well, if I'd done things differently, I could have been the other side and sitting there listening to someone else talking and I would have been in prison and that, that could have been a possibility. Who knows? So yeah, it was a scary thing to do the first time. You think, well, I'm going into prison here, what's going to happen, but no, it was so relaxed and they were so nice and come up and shook my hand afterwards. And that. I think prison bought a couple of copies of my book and they had it in the library there. So I think they had the opportunity to go and read that as well. And I think some of them were inspired by that. And I think they wanted to come, when they come out, do things differently and kind of look at themselves a bit more instead of going back to the old haunts, coming out and going back to what they know and then end up back in prison again. I think some of them wanted to have that opportunity to think, right, next time I go out, I'm going to start looking at myself more and see where I can make changes. Then hopefully I don't end up back in prison, which I hope they don't.
Was there a moment in time? I call them sliding door moments almost. Was there a moment in time that made you realize that you needed to do something about this? Like you needed to make the different choice?
Yeah, it was back in the end of 2016. I think I hit rock bottom for the last time. And my mum made a call to the local NHS hospital and they said they've got a mental health department there. So they got me an appointment. And I thought it was just going to be one of these same old meetings to go there, talk a little bit, and then they just shove you full of pills and bug you out the door again. And so I wasn't really kind of feeling it. But for me, that was the beginning of my journey to now, because I got diagnosed with the borderline personality disorder from the trauma and things like that. And they offered me group therapy counselling. The first session I went in with others, I felt like I actually belonged somewhere. I didn't feel like an alien in the world anymore because I was in a room full of people who looked at the world the same way as I did, even though they haven't had trauma like I have. I don't know because we didn't delve into that, but it was all there for a reason because they all looked at the world the same way as I did. And that was the kind of kick up the arse I needed and just learned about myself. And it ended up me writing the book and being the man I am today. So that was definitely the sliding door moment, as you say.
Yeah, the moment in time where things could have gone very differently for you. And I never underestimate a sliding door moment. I think that they are very that when you flick the switch and you make a different choice, and it really has a massive impact and takes you on a different path. And I believe that we'll often end up on the path we're supposed to end up on anyway. We just sometimes kind of go all over the place.
Yeah, I've done lots of zigzags across that path so many times, but thankfully, hopefully, I'm on it for life now. I really do hope so.
And there was, I always ask this, I think I sort of mentioned it very much at the beginning, but is there anything that you would read, that you could read in a newspaper about yourself that would make you, like, is there any story that is still kind of lingering that would still make you feel a bit uncomfortable? Or do you feel you've done a lot of the work around that?
I believe I've done a lot of the work. You know, I'd be worried if anyone tried to turn my story in a negative way. You know, that's just granted, or any turn it into a way that's going to have a negative impact, not just on me, but other survivors out there. They might read that and think, well, what's the point of trying to do something positive with it when they're just going to get slated like that or things like that? And you know, I've hurt loads of people over the past, so I guess that if anyone wants to be manipulative and want to have their say on the story, then that's something that, you know, I'm prepared for, but I'll always not defend it, say, well, you know, it was because my mental health or it's because my trauma. I'll just basically, like I said earlier on, you know, it wasn't a choice. It was just me trying to find myself. I've apologized so much all the time for hurting people, and I'll always apologize for it. You know, if they still hurt by it, I'll apologize. You know, I don't go out my way to purposely hurt people. I just, unfortunately, drag them along on my crazy journey of discovering myself. You know, that's the only way I can put it. You know, but then I have to think sometimes that I know I'm not the only one in this world who's made mistakes. You know, in the past, I punished myself so much because I thought I was the only one. And I was led to believe by others that I was the only one that made mistakes. Their ones were okay because there was only small mistakes, as they put it. But it wasn't. They just, I think it was because no one wanted to admit that they couldn't understand or begin to understand what I went through. So the easiest way is to dismiss it or to ridicule it or to make it just my problem, if that makes sense, that no one wants to deal with it. So the best thing to do is just, well, we'll just say, well, that's you. You can deal with that. And if you hurt me, we're going to use that against you.
Yeah.
And that's what I had for years. And, you know, I'm not perfect. I still make mistakes now. You know, I still have my bad days and that. And I say some horrible things when I'm angry and that. I don't mean to. It's just the way I'm wired sometimes. It's just, you know.
And you try, and you know, the fact that you're working through that and you're aware of that is very different to somebody who's going out of their way to just do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The people use mental health and anything like that as an excuse for things that really, really bugs me because it makes it harder for the people who are really suffering to open up when people are using that as an excuse. Like I saw something on Facebook the other day, it really wound me up. It was another so-called paedophile who was talking, he thought he was talking to young boys, but he was actually talking to a police officer and that. And he didn't get sentenced because he said that he was a loner, he suffered with his mental health and things like that. I'm like, wow, straight away, like you just accept that you've done it, you know. Yeah, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, like me, I've, like I said earlier on, I'll say it, I've hurt loads of people and I'm sorry that I'm not dismissing it and that, and I'm not here saying, oh, woe is me or look at me, oh, feel sorry for me. That's not what it is. You know, I'm not that person. I'm just doing this to help others. You know, and if people don't like that, I can't change that you can't please everyone in life.
No, but it's an edgy conversation to have, because there are a lot of people that would prefer to not admit that stuff happens, that this goes on. It still goes on. I was talking with my family a few weeks ago about all the childhood heroes that we used to watch on the television, and half of them are fall into SD's camp, right? So it was a thing. It is a thing, and I guess we want to prevent it from other children, from other young people suffering from that, and believing conversations and listening and seeing, it would never have been the child that was the problem in that situation.
It's been a mucked up world for so many years, and it was covered up so well.
It's often a power play, isn't it? In that situation, they're exerting power.
That's another podcast. Really,
that really is.
That's a couple of podcasts worth there. I could talk all day about that, but then sometimes, do they deserve to be talked about anymore? They're being punished now, or they're not with us anymore. But
interesting.
It's all educational, though, isn't it? It's all spreading that awareness and getting the subject so it's not so much of a taboo anymore, and that stuff carries on going. Still, stuff happens, and no one knows about it until someone opens up when it's too late. And I don't know a way of stopping it happening. I wish I could. I wish I could wave that magic wand and no one else would ever get abused sexually or physically anymore. But I guess that if we carry on talking about it, then it might make it easier for people to open up and spot the signs. And before these happen, I don't know. I'm waffling on again. You know me.
You're not waffling on. That's what we're here for. Anyway. But and that's what I find admirable about the work that you're doing, in the fact that you're passionate about sharing not only your story, but raising awareness around mental health issues, around personality disorders, around trauma in childhood. All of those things are very important conversations we need to be having, and they've always been behind closed doors, and now is the time, I feel, that these conversations are starting to happen more and more more and more. And it's going back to that whole point around it's not things that have happened to you, but for you. I hate that phrase sometimes, but I guess that's one way of kind of disempowering the story that you could be carrying around with you. It's like, it's not your fault. You are now here to do the work, to share the story, so that other people can feel less alone, so other people can make different choices. And I mean, your father was never convicted, was he? He died just before.
That.
And maybe you sharing your stories may mean that other people do take action quicker, or are able to get the help.
Yeah, like we said, everyone, hindsight is a marvelous thing. I wish I spoke up sooner, then maybe we could have got some justice and things like that. But as the saying goes, I'm not a fan of it. It is what it is. These things happen for a reason, I guess. But the worst he ever got over the years that he'd been in the court and things like that was a 2-year suspended sentence for certain things. I don't know all of the things he got up to. I only know about some. There could be loads that no one will ever know. Do you know what I mean? Because he's obviously not around anymore. But he went to magistrates court, then got adjourned to Crown Court. Then a couple of weeks before he was due in there, I got a call from the local hospital saying that, "Are you Ryan Harland?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "We think we've got your," I really struggle with this word, father. Always bothers me, that word, when explained about him. And they said that, he hasn't got long to live. And I'm thinking, this is crap. He's making us up to try and get away with things. So I went up to the hospital, tried to call their bluff. They said, no, it's definitely him. And they took me into the ward that he was in. They said that he's unconscious, but he can hear. So I pulled the curtains around his bed, sat down beside him, and said everything I wanted to say and what I wanted to say at the court, if it had got that far. I wasn't shouting. I whispered a few swear words, obviously, but I said what I wanted to say, got up, pulled the curtain back so I could walk out, closed it again, and walked out. And then next morning I got a call saying, yeah, he's passed. And I cried. I think it was a bit of mixed emotions. Like, even though everything he'd done, he was still that F word. And I think a lot of it was frustration and anger tears. I just felt like, he kind of got away with it. He didn't get the full justice. And obviously losing my brother just before that, felt like my brother went through hell in his life, passed away, and it was all for nothing. It was all, it was for absolutely nothing. And he got away with that as well. And that day that I think we got that call to say he passed, I think that was the beginning of the end for me of that period. That's when I started going off the rails. I just felt like, well, what's the point? What's the point in anything in this world? There's no point in being happy because it doesn't get you anywhere. Everyone gets away with everything. So that's when I just started ruining my life. Like I said earlier on, I had an affair that ruined my first marriage, and just sleeping around, drinking, drugs, anything just to get some affirmation in life. Because I thought, what's the point? I was turning into a selfish prick, basically. It's no, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'll turn into a selfish. I just didn't care about anyone, and it wasn't a narcissistic way of it not caring anyone. There was nothing inside there.
And then you had your sliding door moment, and that's why you're here now.
Yeah. Isn't it weird that you don't realise it's a sliding door moment until you look back? Because at that time, you don't realise that's the pivotal point in your life so far that's made you've basically taken the right angle from the road you was on to where you were supposed to be. And it's like, but you don't realise at the time. It's when you look back, think, wow, that was the exact moment, and things start to change. And best day of my life, I guess, apart from my marriage to my new beautiful wife. But don't tell her that it was the best day of my life. But yeah, I think,
obviously, best day of the rest of your life, maybe.
Yeah, it's if I hadn't have done, if Mum had made that call to get me that appointment, I wouldn't be talking to you now. And I'm not saying that I wouldn't be alive now, but I'm just saying that I don't think I'll be doing what I'm doing now. I wouldn't be where I am now, meeting the love of my life and things like that. I don't know where I'll be. It's scary to think. Anything was possible back then. I just didn't care.
Well, thank you so much. And deep breath. That's you have a very powerful story, and you're doing some amazing work in the world. And I just want to thank you for being completely open, honest, and candid with me on my podcast. If you want to book Ryan or get in touch with Ryan, I'll put that in the show notes. If you suffered with anything that Ryan has talked about, I am sure he'd be open to conversation. And where can we get your book from, Ryan? Is it on Amazon?
It's on Amazon, yeah.
Biding the Storm by Ryan Harland. So thank you again for coming on and sharing your story.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, yeah, absolutely welcome. And by the way, we do actually have quite a laugh. So,
No, I'm 100% serious all the time, don't you know?
But yeah, I am absolutely honoured to have held your space in this episode, and please join us again for another episode of Shameless Stories. I'll be back in a week or so with some more amazing stories to be shared. So thank you again, and thank you, Ryan, and catch you soon.